Economic News. Today we have a special report about the past few decades through a unique view. Ulysses Urena is covering this truly special story. Ulysses?
Yes, thank you, Brandon. Today we have a very special opportunity to interview a married couple that have been through all the ups and downs of the past 5 decades. It's a very special day for them as well. It's their 56th wedding anniversary. Okay, joining us today we have George and Nancy Gearhart. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask you a few questions and I would like your feedback on these. So the first question is, do you remember what you were doing and how you felt when you heard that JFK had been shot?
I do not remember it. I think it would have come first by television. Then I might have heard about it, because we were married in '63 and that was late '60s, so I don't remember much about it.
Do you remember how you felt?
No. I was too young to have feelings about it.
Oh, okay.
I remember vividly, and I watched it on TV over and over, and very sad, shocked, just couldn't believe it, but, and what really shocked me was how swiftly they made Lyndon Johnson the president. I mean, it was just such a chaotic time that, it was.
Remember about the civil rights movement, things like the riots, the passive resistance, segregation, or the killing of MLK?
I remember we were in California, in Los Angeles, and we were just leaving from vacation, and the Watts riots broke out. That's when they pretty much burnt down Watts. I guess that was the first really knowledge I had about Civil War. I remember when Martin Luther King was shot, yes. It was a sad day.
Yeah.
I didn't totally understand everything that was going on, though, at that time.
Do you remember around what age you were at the time?
It was about 4 years. Yeah, we were married in
22 or 23.
Yeah, 22 or 23 at that time when we were out in Los Angeles when the Watts riots broke loose. Whether that was the beginning of the confrontation of the black situation, I do not know. Again, history was not my big subject, so I just remember that, and I remember Martin Luther King being shot, and that's about it.
Do you remember about the space program and the first landing on the moon?
I remember the landing on the moon, and it was a triumphant day for, I think, the world, but especially the United States. I remember the planting of the flag and saying that this is, I don't remember the saying now, that he said when he stepped down onto the moon. Yeah, he made a famous saying at that time, and I don't remember. But it was a big deal as far as I was concerned. That, wow, we've got a man up on the moon. So it was a big day for me, but that's as much as I can go with that.
Yeah, I remember him, and it was one step for mankind, right?
It was.
I mean,
It's one small step for man and one
giant step
Step
for
for
Step for
mankind, yeah.
mankind. That's it, yeah.
but
Yep.
it was a great day.
Do you remember anything about Ronald Reagan?
In my eyes, Ronald Reagan was a great president. I think he did a lot for this country. I remember the Berlin Wall coming down because of Ronald Reagan. But to me, just personally, he was one of the better presidents that I remember something about.
And he was a godly man. Had a good family.
Yeah.
Okay, so could you tell us everything you remember about the Vietnam War?
Well, I'll just say I remember a lot about the Vietnam War. I was drafted during the Vietnam War. I don't remember much about how it got started. I remember a lot about how it ended. It was not a war to be talked about. Most returning soldiers won't talk about the Vietnam War. it was just a bad war. And that's about where I'll leave it.
Okay. What do you remember about the Watergate and Nixon's resignation?
I don't remember much of the details about it. I do remember it. I remember him emphatically claiming he was innocent and not guilty of any of it. I remember him stepping down, and that's about where I'll leave it.
I remember him as the worst president we ever had, and it just went on and on. The news got worse, and it's better to just leave him out of the picture altogether because of what he did to our country. He just dragged it down.
Can you tell us what you remember about Elvis Presley and the Beatles?
Well, my impressions of Elvis Presley, he was the founder of rock and roll. And my first time seeing Elvis Presley was on a show called the Ed Sullivan Talent Show. And he introduced Elvis Presley as an upcoming artist and would go places. But then he also told us that we would only see Elvis Presley from the waist up. That was strange. But we found out that that was because Elvis Presley swung his hips. And that was taboo back then at that time. But about 4 years later, when rock and roll really took off, I saw Elvis Presley on a show called the Dick Clark Show, which was very similar to the Ed Sullivan, but more advanced, more technology. And I actually got to see the whole body of Elvis Presley at that time. Long, black hair, back, big guitar, swinging his hips like crazy, swiveling his hips. So, want to add anything?
I think you said it all.
Yeah, the Beatles, I know of the Beatles. And that's about all I can say. I remember watching them on TV or listening to their music, but I don't have near the impression on the Beatles as I did with Elvis Presley, because Elvis Presley really changed music totally. It went from the Bing Crosby era to Elvis Presley rock and roll, and it changed music in a big way.
So can you tell us what your favorite activities were growing up, like songs, movies, or games?
Games would have been baseball. I played a lot of Little League baseball. I played a lot of baseball where you made your own baseball field. So growing up, we improvised and made our own baseball fields. So I had good memories. So that would have probably been my favorite sport, was baseball. And I played that right up until shortly after we were married. I played baseball for teams. So I did enjoy baseball. Music, my favorite was Ricky Nelson, which probably may or may not have ever heard of, but he was about the same time as Elvis Presley. But I liked his music better.
Do you have anything to add?
I did too.
You also like Ricky Nelson?
Yeah. Elvis Presley was okay, but I mean, Ricky Nelson was nice to dance with George too, and George
sang
did
a
not
lot.
do the Elvis Presley.
Yeah, he sang a lot of slow music, Ricky Nelson.
My girlfriends, we jitterbugged. We were out dancing on the floor. We didn't care if the guys were out there or not. They didn't want to go out and jitterbug.
And that's not a fishing lure, people.
No, it's not. It's a dance.
Jitterbug, what is that?
Cut.
Well, that'll wrap it all up. That's all the questions we did today. Again, thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure to have you. And back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Ulysses, for that very special report. Next, Warriors and Raptors are coming up.